Hey everyone, it's been 7 days since my last video, and I must confess, I haven't been arrested yet. So yeah, hi, I'm Diana Davison, and I've spent the last 3 days reading trial transcripts from what's known as the Twitter trial in Canada. We're talking about hundreds of pages full of hashtags, ats, and the general bullshittery of what people call conversation on the website known as Twitter. I say that in what seems like a disrespectful tone, but I must admit that Twitter is an interesting tool for expressing ideas and spreading concepts. It just often goes incredibly wrong. Twitter is one of the primary locations for the court of public opinion, and I have a lot to say about that. I'll actually be speaking in public about the court system this Friday. That is Friday, June 17th, as part of a panel discussion called The Accusation is the Verdict, hosted by Simon Fraser University's Advocacy for Men and Boys, sponsored by Cafe. If you live in the greater Vancouver area, I encourage you to attend. The panel is stellar, and I'm honored to be sitting at the same table as my co-panelists. So if you can make it to the event, the link is below. It should be both a fascinating discussion about the challenges that men face in the current legal system and a chance to meet other people who share concerns about the meaning of equality in the courtrooms of Canada. Returning to the Twitter trial, and this is really a return because I talked about it in a previous video, there's good reason to dive into more detail in terms of what actually transpired there. I started out joking about how I haven't been arrested yet, and this is directly connected to the importance of examining one Stephanie Guthrie and her organization named Witopoly, or Women in Toronto Politics. In the Twitter trial, Gregory Allen Elliott was charged with criminal harassment for defending himself against an orchestrated attack by a feminist group called Witopoly, which, incidentally, he had previously supported and tried to help promote. After reading the testimony and cross-examination of Stephanie Guthrie, I can tell you she is a truly dangerous individual. I won't be able to get into the evidence for that assertion in this video, but count on it next week. For now, I'd like to discuss a complainant in the case whose charges were dropped right before she was due to testify, and that is a woman named Paisley Ray. Paisley acted as a social media consultant for the Toronto Police and hosted a Witopoly meeting with Gregory Allen Elliott as their main subject of concern. Their plan was based on how to incite Mr. Elliott sufficiently that they could cause him to cross a legal boundary, resulting in his arrest. Many people have wondered how the Twitter trial ended up in criminal charges on such thin evidence. As police admitted themselves, Mr. Elliott never tweeted anything specifically threatening, and I'm going to suggest to you that the charges were laid because Paisley Ray had friends at Toronto Police Services. I'm suggesting this because, very recently, the Toronto Police Services tried to have some of my tweets removed on the premise I'd violated a court order that doesn't exist. It's absurd to think that the Toronto Police Services would use the power of their office without any hint of investigation, and yet the power of their office was used to silence me without even reading the tweets in question. They just listened and believed. Only one other person that I know of received the same takedown notice about tweets that violated a non-existing court order. That other person was, surprise, surprise, Gregory Allen Elliott. So here's a question for serious consideration. What will society look like if a political group like Witopoly can use the Toronto Police as their minions? How is it that the Toronto Police would use their badges to try to silence someone or use their power to arrest without properly investigating the charges first? That is a world we don't want to live in. So I'm going to get into what the transcripts reveal next week. Meanwhile, I'll tell you another world we don't want to live in, and it's connected to more recent events. I'm bringing this up today because it was hard to keep focused on my Witopoly investigation while the following news was breaking. For the last year and a half, the Toronto Star, major media in Canada, has been leading a witch hunt against former radio star Jian Ghomeshi and his former employer, the CBC, or Canadian Broadcast Corporation. They've been demanding complete transparency over how an alleged tushy grab could have taken place in their newsroom without discipline, and the CBC has shelled out hundreds of thousands of dollars in publicly funded expenses to assure the Toronto Star and others that they care about their employees' safety. Just a quick note, no one at the CBC died, unlike at the Toronto Star. The entire time that Kevin Donovan, investigative reporter for Toronto Star, was deep undercover trying to root out how many inappropriate back rubs Mr. Ghomeshi might have given, he was apparently completely unaware that full-on sex was going on in his own newsroom. This was extramarital sex, and it resulted in a suicide when the unfortunate female journalist involved found out her office fuck buddy was also having sex with their female boss. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that apparently a lot of people should have known about before it ended in her death. To the best of public knowledge, the Toronto Police, thus far, have no investigation into the death of Raveena Aulakh. Reporters from outside the Toronto Star, who have called for serious investigation and public inquiry, have been villainized by the Star as immoral and disrespectful. The union representing Toronto Star employees has called for an external inquiry into the situation, and another journalist named Stephanie Seska was reported to have been fired for complaining about sexual politics in the office, and subsequently a settlement was reached out of court to keep the issue silent. I attempted to confirm this report with Ms. Seska, who has not responded to me at this time. I have not yet asked Mr. Donovan if he went undercover as a woman in his own office to find out if John Filson would try to have sex with him, but I'm fairly sure he didn't. As it was, Donovan was too busy investigating an alleged cupping of Catherine Burrell's rabid unicorn buttocks at the CBC. So, stay tuned for why Stephanie Guthrie is a dangerous predator and why Kevin Donovan is a shit reporter.